I think we'll go ahead and get started. I just want to welcome everybody. Hi, my name's Amy Dessenberg-Wines. I help manage the Iowa Coalition for Integration and Employment. And I am so excited that you're here today instead of at that Harkin Summit. I know that we have a lot of folks who got pulled to the Harkin Summit, which is also a wonderful thing. So I truly don't begrudge that. But thank you so much for joining us. Please feel free to jump in at any time if you have questions or comments. It's a really important part of the process with the coalition. Our agenda for today is we're going to share a little information about opportunities for registered apprenticeships. We're going to have the lovely Leanne Moskowitz give us updates on Iowa Medicaid and what's happening there. There's lots of things going on there. We have an IPS update. We're going to meet the new bureau chief who replaced Steve Faulkner at IVRS, Richard Clark. We have, we're actually going to make time today to let IVRS give some good updates and talk about customized discovery and some other updates. I'm sorry, Vienna, for past meetings where you weren't able to talk. And then we'll have a short Absi update and any other partner updates as we go. Please just note, excuse me, if you haven't already, our next coalition meeting is November 18th. We had hoped it would be in person, but now we are, we had decided at our last core team meeting that we were going to continue the virtual meeting structure in November. So it will be 10 to 12:30 and we'll send information out on that. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And I would like to turn this over to Asdish. Asdish, you have to please correct how I pronounce your name, and Jennifer with Iowa Workforce Development to tell us a little bit about the Registered Apprenticeship Program.
Thank you very, very much. We really appreciate that you're having us today. So this is Asagadish, and you will pronounce it 100%. So I am a career planner with the western side of the state. I handle central Iowa, including Marshalltown, and the western side of the state as far as working with job seeker and registered apprenticeship opportunities. And my colleague, Jen, so you can go ahead, Jen.
Sorry, I was going to have to unmute myself. I'm Jennifer Gray. I am Asagadish's counterpart on the eastern side. So I have like Waterloo, Dubuque, all the way down to Clinton and over to Ottumwa. That's the area that I cover in Iowa. We are registered apprenticeship career planners. So we work with individuals that are seeking apprenticeship programs with an employer. So we work with them on job development, such as resumes, mock interviewing, coordinating with business marketing specialists to get them into an apprenticeship program of their choosing, of the occupation that they're interested in. So we're going to start off just talking a little bit about what is a registered apprenticeship program when it comes to an individual looking to get into a program. Basically, a registered apprenticeship is a earn as you learn program. So that individual is an actual employee of that company. They start earning wages day one as soon as they start working for that employer. It's really an employer-driven type of program. So the employer decides what they're going to learn on the job, what they are also going to learn for the schooling piece of the registered apprenticeship program. They also determine whether how the wages as well, because there's a wage increase as well throughout the program. One of the big things that a lot of the individuals that do like about a registered apprenticeship program is that on-the-job learning. So you don't necessarily need to have the technical skills for that job. You don't need to have like the work skills or like a work history in that particular occupation, because they're going to teach you how to do that job while you're working. And you're going to have that one-on-one mentor, someone that has done this particular occupation for quite some time, someone that has a lot of knowledge of that occupation. A lot of employers really look for those mentors that are possibly looking to retire down the road that can really spread that knowledge off to new workers, so they can retain that knowledge. On the flip side of the one-on-one mentorship and learning on the job, you also have the schooling piece. So they're going to do to some type of schooling that can, how that looks really is determined by the employer. So you can, so the individual could eventually go to school, like at a community college. They could do some online schooling. They could do a combination of both. And some employers actually have their own classroom and instructor on site as well. So it really depends on that employer, how they have that set up. About 95% of the time, the employer does pay for that type of schooling. So that kind of is a real good incentive for an individual because they won't have that student loan debt that a lot of the individuals that, you know, may not really want to go to school because they don't want that debt or they can't afford to go to school. So that is one good thing about a registered apprenticeship program. Also, during the registered apprenticeship program, as your skills increase, your pay will also increase as well. So you could start out at like $16 an hour, but by the time that you're done, you could be at $21, $22 per hour of a 1 to 5 year program. So it really just that employer still makes that determination on where they're going to start and where they're going to end up by the time the program is done. But they'll be able to see, the apprentice will be able to see that wage progression with that program. The last component of a registered apprenticeship program is the certification. So they receive a national occupational credential. What this entails, what this allows is the Department of Labor has signed off saying that this individual has learned all the skills of how to do this occupation while learning on the job, and also the schooling piece of it. So if an individual is interested in moving out of state and they don't want to start all over again in another program, that credential is allowing them to show an employer saying, I was trained in this already. Now I could potentially become a journeyman now versus just an apprentice. So it's a really great program. I know I kind of threw a lot of information out at you right now, so you may have some questions, but I'm going to also put Asagadish and I's contact information in the chat. So if you have any more questions, or if you have any questions or want to ask anything that you're curious about regarding registered apprenticeships, feel free to reach out to both of us. But I'm going to hand it over to Asagadish to talk about the referral process of a registered apprenticeship program.
Thank you very much, Jen. So, you know, it's a lot of information that we're providing you in the short time, but please feel free to reach out to us with any further clarification, questions. We'll be happy to do that. I'm going to give you just a brief overview of referrals. So let's say if you do have an individual that is interested in becoming an apprentice, where do we start? So as we indicated earlier, Jen covered the eastern side of the state and I cover western side of the state. The breakdown of that, I'm just going to read out for you the locations that we cover in the surrounding area. So for the western side in central Iowa, I've got Des Moines, Council Bluffs, Sioux City, Denison. We have Carroll, Spencer, Creston, and Marshalltown. And then for Jennifer's side, the eastern side of the state, she'll cover Waterloo, Mason City, Ottumwa, Dubuque, Davenport, Clinton, Burlington, Cedar Rapids, and Iowa City. Now, when an individual indicates interest, we have them fill an interest form on the Earn and Learn site. Now, the Earn and Learn site has a database where it kind of houses a lot of information. It might be helpful that you would take a look at it, and we can you know, dive through it a lot more in different settings. But individual will indicate interest. on the Earn and Learn, and based on what they selected on there, like based on their location, they either will come to Jennifer or myself. On the Earn and Learn, we don't ask a lot of questions except of, what are they interested in? Where are they located? If they have a resume, we would like to see it so that way we can work with the individual one-on-one on tweaking their resume and helping them to come up with a product that they can be proud of and they can present to employers. So, and sometimes individual would not know what they're interested in because simply they just heard about registered apprenticeship. It might be very interesting to them, but yet they don't know what field they can go to. So Jen and I will help them with assessment so that way they can identify what occupation would suit them better. We also provide ongoing support in order for them to understand the concept of registered apprenticeship. Again, the 5 components Jennifer mentioned, it's very important that we informing the individual when they come to us. We also work with them as far as the preparation to the mock interview. If there are barriers that prevent them from employment, that's something we quite often discuss in those meetings or visits with the job seeker and the individual. Anything that we can do to assist and help the individual in order for them to get to where they need to be, that's our function and role is going to be with that individual. We also have connection with the sponsors that are offering the registered apprenticeship opportunity in order for us, when the individual is ready to go, then we're making that referral. There are times where individual would need accommodation. Those are also discussions that we will have with the employer. We are utilizing our team. It might not be us personally, but it might be a business marketing specialist, whoever we have that we can utilize the connection we have with the employer and the sponsor. And when I say sponsor, usually it's an employer that is offering registered apprenticeship opportunities. So that's the technical term for us. So we make that connection in order for us to see if the employer, the sponsor, is willing to offer the accommodation to the individual. I think when it gets to the accommodation piece, we always want to be cautious. We want to be advocating for the seekers that we're working with, but we also don't disclose information right off the bat with disclosing the name of the individual. We kind of work the detail on that in order for us to see if that's even the right fit for the individual that is going to be interested in that opportunity. Sometimes it's a case-by-case basis, so we kind of take it into consideration and move forward with that individual. I would say toward the end, if they're not offered the opportunity, we always help them with, let's say maybe it's an opportunity that is not registered apprenticeship. So we work with our staff at the local American Job Center in order for us to say, they're interested in other opportunities, could you assist? So there are always going to be a supportive services that we're offering in order for us to get the individual to where they need to be. And Amy, I'm going to hand it off to you because it's about 10:16 right now. I think we have about 15 minutes.
Thank you. I'm sorry. It's everything unregistered apprenticeships at the Cliff Notes, right? So I just wanted to let folks know that Agstish and Jennifer are really actively trying to let folks with disabilities know about the opportunities to be engaged in a registered apprenticeship. And so, please feel free to share information with folks, or maybe even ask if they'd be willing to come in and meet with your organizations if you think it's appropriate, just to really let people know about the opportunity and support individuals with disabilities who might be interested in being engaged in that program. I see too that Leanne had mentioned getting some information on how employers could become registered apprenticeship sponsor. And so we'll get that information and include that in our notes with folks, as well as we can put the Earn and Learn information in the notes as well and the contact information for everybody. Does anybody else have any other questions that they'd like to ask right now?
So is there, Slan, is there a minimum age of folks that you work with, or do you work with transition age youth?
Yes, so there is quality pre-apprenticeship programs, which are like before the registered apprenticeship programs. So registered apprenticeship programs are usually 18 and older. But then the quality pre-apprenticeship programs can be, I think it's like 16 to, we consider youth 16 to 24 as well. So we have talked with Voc Rehab with the transitions team regarding those quality pre-apprenticeship programs. Generally, Sagadish and I only work with 18 and older, but we still do talk with high schoolers, the students, the youth regarding registered apprenticeship programs. And also collaborate with the school system, because a lot of them do have those quality pre-apprenticeship programs started up. So we do work with those individuals as well. So.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you taking the time today to share a little bit on registered apprenticeship programs. Again, we'll include information in the notes from today's meeting. And if other questions come up, just you feel free to put them in the chat, and we can forward those on, or maybe still address those this afternoon or this morning. So I'm going to go ahead then and turn this over to Leanne. Leanne, if you make sure, if you need the screen, you can grab it. Otherwise, we'll give it to you. Oops, you're muted, Leanne.
Good gracious, lovely technology. I'm trying to close the chat box, so I'm not seeing that, and I keeps asking me if I want to leave the meeting. You know? Always fun. Good times, good times. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you can see that. Can you all see my screen? No.
Nope.
Let me try again. Oh, I guess I have to click on share. That might be helpful.
Now we
All right.
can.
Now you can see it. Okay. All right. So I was asked to talk a little bit about the employment data collection. And of course, for the state fiscal year that started July 1st, we are kind of revising how we collect employment data. And so there were some questions that came into Amy that I'll try and walk through and try and clarify what we're asking and what the expectation is for the data collection. And so we have added, so beginning in January of 2022, we've added 2 additional employment data collection periods. And the reason why we've done that is because we want to be more responsive to changes that we're seeing in employment data, so that perhaps we can address that. We can, maybe clarify policy. We can maybe work with case managers and care coordinators to how they can be more attentive to the members' employment needs, wages, hours, earnings, those kinds of things. And so we've added 2 additional data collection periods that'll happen in April. So we'll collect data in January, and we'll collect data in July, in addition to April and October. And so if you can see my screen, hopefully that's big enough for folks. You can see that our data collection period here. So our next data collection period will be for October 15th through 29th. And the MCOs report that to us by January 31st. And so the expectation is that the MCO will ask the provider to report the employment data for the members for whom they were authorized to deliver services during that 2-week period of time. So each MCO can establish it differently. I think what would be helpful is if the MCO sends a listing to the providers of, these are the members that you're authorized to serve in each one of these employment services. Please provide us with the following data. And we felt that it was most accurate to get the information from the provider that's being paid to directly serve the member, rather than trying to go through a case manager who only has monthly or maybe quarterly contact with that member. And so we felt like we'd get more accurate reporting going directly to the service provider rather than going, through the middleman, the case manager. So things that we're doing, let me make this just a titch smaller. Hopefully y'all can see my screen. So here we've looking at the number of people that are competitively employed, and that's across all 3 programs. We want to know out of all BI waiver members that you're serving, how many are competitively employed, regardless of whether they're receiving a employment service. And so that type of information would come from the case manager. The case manager is going to be the one to know whether the person's working or not, right? So that information should be coming through on the member service plans. I work here, I do this, I get these kinds of supports, what have you. So the month following the close of the data collection period, we expect the MCOs to ask the case managers for that information. And then the next, let me open up, this one's kind of messy. Let me move this one. Can you guys see this now? The template. So these are the data definitions. And the reason why I was showing you 2 different things is because one's the mock-up, the other one, those timelines and stuff are actually in the MCO reporting manual. And so that's separate from the data collection template. So this is the template. So this talks about, for the groupings. So what we've done here is we've broken out the data by the different services so that we're not grouping pre-voc and career exploration together. We want those reported separately. I want to see how many people are actually going through career exploration. When I get to the employment data, you'll see why. And so these are we're collecting it on individual supported employment, long-term job coaching, small group, pre-voc, career exploration, and then starting with the October data collection period, we're going to collect the data on IPS. And what enables us to do that is those IPS codes go into effect September 1st. So as of September 1st, the 2 providers that are currently providing IPS to Fidelity will no longer need an exception to policy. And so if you look, the current language says until November 30th or until the department has promulgated rules. Well, the rules are adopted. They're in place starting September 1. Exception to policy is no longer needed. These providers will begin billing the standard billing processes using the appropriate billing codes for the services. And so you can see here, that'll be the T2018 U3, U4, U5, and U6. And I have an informational letter draft that I'll also share with y'all here in a minute that kind of goes into a little bit more detail about that it's circling through the process of approval right now, but I thought it's good information y'all should have today. So then we also count. So the first thing, we count is the members competitively employed, and that's across all programs. And then we count the number of members for which a claim was paid for the services. So that's like our denominator, right? So of these number of folks, these are the number of folks that had a paid claim. So that's our universe that we're looking at. And then what was the wage, hours, and earnings for each of those members that had a paid claim during that 2-week period of time. So then we're looking at the average number of hours worked in 2 weeks at the individual member level to roll up to our aggregate average, right? And then we're looking at the earnings over 2 weeks and the average hourly earnings. So not a whole lot has changed about the data collection, other than we want to go through the providers who deliver the services. We are breaking out the pre-voc and career exploration services. And we want that level detail. So when you look at, this is what the template will look like, right? So we're going to report separately for the brain injury waiver, ID waiver. Somebody's talking.
But
Hey, if you're not on mute, could you mute yourself while I talk, please?
Got him, sorry.
Thanks, no worries. It's just hard for everybody else to hear. Okay, so this is the data collection template that's used to report the employment data back to the department. I would expect that the MCOs would ask for something similar from the service providers for the population that they're authorized to serve. And so you can see that we've got the services broken out. We want ICIE reported independently. We want long-term job coaching, you know, those are kind of grouped together. Small group SE, pre-voc, and career exploration. And so we do that for each of the 3 programs, HAB, ID waiver, and BI waiver. So that's kind of what the data looks like. So are there any questions on I think the question and what, there was a specific question about, well, how are we going to collect IPS data when we're operating under exception to policy? Well, I think I've answered that question. As of September 1, they don't need the exception anymore because we have these codes that have been adopted and implemented within the IME. They're programmed into the MMIS now. The rates are programmed into the MMIS now, so that for any data service after September 1st, we're able to pay for those IPS codes. And of course, there's only 2 providers right now, so it's not a huge impact across the system. But as we bring more providers online, this will enable them to bill without having to go through the exception to policy process. The rules and standards are implemented. Let's see here. So questions on data collection? I think that's kind of it on that. So then the next thing I wanted to talk about real quick is IPS, and that kind of bleeds over from the data collection. So this is a draft informational letter that's being circulated for review right now. I'm hoping that it goes out early next week. There shouldn't be a whole lot of comments from, you know, our internal folks or our managed care partners. This has been in the works for a long time. We've been talking about IPS for a long time now, so this shouldn't be anything new. So anyway, we are announcing that the amendments to the rules have been made. We give a kind of a brief definition of IPS, and then I'm giving you links to where the rules are. So the IPS definitions, provider qualifications, and standards are in 7725. And so these are the habilitation rules. But if you go and you look at the ID waiver supported employment, we link back to the habilitation supported employment rules because we want everything to be the same, and we don't want to have to duplicate our information in 2 different parts of the rule. So this, even though it might say HAB, if you go look at ID, we reference back to the HAB rules. We also provide the service definition, scopes, and units of service in Chapter 78. So the meat of how you become an IPS provider are in Chapter 77. And so you have to be, you have to have gone through the IPS, the steps to become an IPS provider. You have to be a recognized provisionally approved provider because you've completed steps 1 through 4A of the process to become an IPS provider. And I think Lynn will talk a little bit more about the Aspire project and what that's going to look like and how providers are going to come on board with doing IPS. And then we have updated our fee schedule to reflect the individual placement and support. And of course, that pre-vocational and supported employment fee schedule is posted on the department's fee schedule website. And I've also provided you a link to that fee schedule. It does reflect the rate changes, the 3.55% rate change that went into effect July 1st. for all HCBS services and HAB services, with an asterisk for HAB services. So those are there. This is the procedure codes that you'll use. I believe there was a question on whether or not the member will be limited to 40 and 60 units, or excuse me, initial 40 and an additional 20 units like they are for individual supported employment. And the answer to that is no, because this is different. This is an outcome. We're paying providers for achievement of an outcome. And so it's not the amount of number of hours that you're delivering. It's, I achieved this outcome for the member, regardless of how many hours I had to put into it, right? So it's a one-time, so the provider will bill us for 1 unit of service when they get the completed employment plan using that T20U3. They'll bill us for 1 unit of service the first day that person's on the job. For the T2018U4, outcome number 3, once they're on the job for 45 days, they're going to bill us for 1 unit of that T2018 U5. And then once the member has been on the job for 90 days successfully, then we're going to pay that 1 unit of that T2018 U6. So, and these rates, if you look at them, the total outcome reimbursement would convert over to the old model that we had right before, where we were using the traditional employment services and certain number of units to arrive at the outcome payment. Now we have a set fee for the outcome. And then, so if a provider, once a provider meets the criteria in 7725 to be considered a provisionally approved IPS provider, they would contact IME provider enrollment, and we will add the procedure codes to the provider certification in our system in order to pay those. So we've done that for our 2 providers that we have now. And then as new providers come on board and meet that initial criteria to be provisionally approved, then we'll add the codes to enable them to begin billing for IPS, because you do have to be delivering IPS services in order to go through a baseline fidelity review. So are there any questions about that? It was kind of fast and furious. And because we are working so closely with the Aspire project, I don't anticipate doing a separate training on IPS at this time. However, in the future, you know, we may need to, but I believe that the folks who are going to be part of the Aspire project will be getting a lot of training and TA on how to deliver IPS. And then as we have additional opportunities for providers to come on board, you know, we may need to look at some development of training, and by then hopefully we have a trainer and reviewer on board that can be part of that and be directing that work. So are there any questions for me on the informational letter or Medicaid implementation?
Leanne, this is Gayla.
Hey,
And
Gayla.
just a point of clarification, you were discussing earlier the MCO data collection. Does
Yes.
that have an informational letter coming out as well as this one about IPS? Are there 2 ILs in the works?
No, I didn't do a communication about the employment data collection. You know, that really, you know, I suppose we could, but it should really be coming from the MCOs, because we charge the MCOs with collecting that data directly from their provider network. And so since we're not collecting the data on the fee-for-service side yet, I still have that as a goal in the future. It's just we gotta figure out how we would manage that. And it has to not be with Leanne Moskowitz, policy person. So, but that might be something that we could ask our HCBS QIO to do in the future, but we'll need some internal conversations about that, because I would really like to have a wholesome picture. I mean, there's only about, you know, 1,300 fee-for-service, you know, HCBS people at any given time. Really small HAB population that's fee-for-service. You know, ID waiver probably makes up the bulk of the fee-for-service folks. but I still think it would be valuable to also have that information on the fee-for-service side of things. So we want to get there eventually, but right now the lion's share of folks are, with the MCOs, and we know we're getting the bulk of the data that we want.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. I just needed to know what to put in the note here.
Absolutely, for sure. So then I think next is that we wanted to talk about the employment data, right? And so the employment data for April came in, and it actually looked really good compared to the October employment data. We saw some positive movement, and I don't know if that's because people perceived that we were coming out on the other side of COVID. We all still know we're in it. The pandemic is ongoing, but I think people's kind of employment started to maybe return to some sense of normalcy in April versus October, when we, were at the height of hospitalizations and positivity and all that good stuff. So we saw some positive movement. So general observations, the numbers of members reported as competitively employed increased across all 3 programs. So that was a great change. Earnings, hours, and wages all increased for all 4 of the 5 services. So that was positive. And then I'll show you the data here in a minute. So individual supported employment, we only had 1 MCO reporting members in individual supported employment. So that concerns me just a bit, because this kind of, helps people jump into the work world. So I was a little concerned about that. BI waiver members saw a decrease in earning and hours, but wages increased. And so I think that's just a difference of a little bit of enrollment, number of people that were participating. And you'll see that when we get to that. And I'll share this with everybody. So Gayla, you don't have to take a picture.
I've been caught.
Yeah, I will send this out to everybody. Or I'll send it to Amy and Jess, and they can send it out to everybody. So habilitation, the number of members increased, and earnings and hours and wages all increased for supported employment participants. ID waiver members decreased participation in ICIE while earnings and wages increased. And of course, you got to kind of take that into consideration, that as the population increases, depending on hours, wages, and you might see things coming down just because of the number of people that are participating too. So for long-term job coaching, we saw BI waiver members, HAB members, and ID members all increase earnings, hours, and wages. So good news. Supported employment, we saw participants for BI waiver decrease while earnings and hours and wages increased. Habilitation, we saw members participating increase. We saw increased earnings and wages and hours. ID waiver, same thing, members increased. So I'm a little concerned about the number of people spending time in small group supported employment instead of competitive integrated individual employment. But I'm glad people are working. So, and it might have been easier for providers to operate enclaves or small groups during the pandemic just because of the staffing considerations. So we may have seen some movement into small group because of the availability. We know there's been a shortage of long-term job coaches and such during the pandemic. Pre-vocational services, we saw the number of BI waiver participants unchanged. Earnings, hours, and wages all increased for those folks. Habilitation, the number of members remained unchanged while earnings, hours, and wages increased. The highest hourly wage was $6.91 an hour, so still below sub-minimum wage, which is to be expected because these people are typically working under a 14C certificate with the pre-vocational service provider, operating a contract with a third-party contract to produce goods or services. The ID waiver, number of members increased, and earnings, hours, and wages increased. The lowest hourly wage at $4.92 an hour. Here's the big disappointment. We had 0 members participating in career exploration. 0. So not a single claim paid for career exploration during the 2-week data collection period in April. So that could mean one of two things. One, no one got a service, or two, they were receiving the services outside of that data collection period, right? I might have got services during the first week of April. I might have got services during the last week of April, but I didn't get them during that 2 weeks. So that may
What was
be,
this compared to October?
well, let's look. So when you look, so when you get into the data, so here's career exploration. So we didn't break this out in October. We didn't know. These two Prevoke, the T2015 and the T2015U3 were grouped together. And so all those members were thrown into the same bucket and reported. So this is the first time that we're actually able to see individual utilization for this service without, doing a data poll. And so we don't know, quite frankly, but you can see how many folks were participating in Prevoke before for BI waiver. And you can come down here to HAB and you can see how many folks were participating in Prevoke. And what concerns me is that's a large number of people participating in pre-vocational services without participating in career exploration. And again, maybe they're participating the first week in April and the last week in April. It's hard to say. Also, pre-vocational services may have been one of those services that providers didn't deliver during the pandemic because of the staffing shortages that they're experiencing, and they focused on the pre-vocational service rather than the more individualized, focused service of career exploration. Again, making some assumptions. Same thing for ID waiver. Again, you can see pre-vocational participation is increasing, which I find interesting that it increased in April, whereas we would have liked to have seen some other movement. But let's just go back to the beginning here. And so so we start off with BI, and so you can see we made good progress. We went from 7.56, and when I talk about enrollment, this is managed care enrollment. And I'll just let you all know that from the last time, what I did this time is I went back and I double checked these enrollment numbers because I started second guessing myself on whether or not I included fee-for-service members in there. And so I wanted to make sure I didn't include fee-for-service members in there. And so the percentage might have changed just slightly from last time, but it was based on the point in time that I was looking at the enrollment last week versus at the time the data was generated. So it was an insignificant change in percentage just by double checking that fee-for-service versus managed care enrollment if you go back and try to compare what I did last time. So all groups, members for whom the MCO has been unable to obtain employment information. So that's really improved. We've gotten a lot better in reporting and collecting that information than we had in previous years. But again, we only had 7 people participating in individual supported employment on the BI waiver across both plans, and only one plan reported members. One plan had 0 members going through individual supported employment. Long-term job coaching saw a nice increase in participants there, so that's good news. Wages went up, or earnings went up, wages went up. I mean, that's not a bad, average wage. So we're showing some really good progress, I think, in that area. Small group, pretty consistent, not seeing a whole lot of movement with the BI waiver folks. Wages though went up, and our average hours went up, and the earnings went up. So again, making some progress for folks. And then of course we just talked about Prevoke. HAB, same thing. We had a huge increase in people being competitively employed under habilitation. And I don't know if that's, people are coming, on the, again, work is improving, from the lows that we were seeing last fall at the height of the pandemic. And again, we might also be getting better data by going to the provider. and looking at the provider and looking at the case manager. Again, is it better reporting, or do we actually have that many more people entering the workforce? I hope it's the latter. So enrollment, again, this is only managed care enrollment for habilitation. So, you know, 15.79% of the habilitation program participants report being competitively employed. So I think that's good news. So then with HAB, you know, again, there weren't any members that we weren't able to collect data on, which is a significant improvement over past years. And then looking at the number of people, we did see a decline in people participating in individual supported employment. Again, that might be reflective of the, you know, the pandemic. It might be reflective of people moving on to actually long-term job coaching or services with VR. Hard to say, but, you know, without doing that individual member level review. So again, long-term job coaching, we saw a big increase in that also. So I think there's been some efforts to talk about employment with people in their recovery processes. And I think maybe there's some more emphasis on employment when we're talking with our, looking at our integrated health homes and their role in helping the member live their best lives. So you can see the number of folks, hours went up, wages went up, or earnings went up, wages went up. So again, good news compared to what we were seeing in October. We also cleaned up some data since last October. Remember when we talked about the data in July, we were talking about, well, members who had 0 hours, 0 wages, and 0 earnings got pulled in and were driving down the averages. And so those folks weren't included in the data this time, so that they weren't throwing off the averages. And then ID waiver, 20% of the population served report being competitively employed. So that's good. We've made nice steady progress in all 3 of those programs on helping people to find employment. So again, we did see quite a decrease in individual SC, but we saw hours increase, we saw earnings increase, and we saw wages increase. So good news for those folks that are working. Long-term job coaching, nice big jump in folks participating in long-term job coaching. So my guess is those folks who were getting individual support employment likely moved into long-term job coaching. We saw a slight increase in hours, slight increase in earnings and wages. So again, folks are making some good progress. Small group supported employment, we saw a jump here. I kind of talked about maybe some of the assumptions of why that happened. Hours went up though, earnings went up, and the wage went up. So really, really good news aggregately. And so we did have some issues with members earning supported or who are participating in individual supported employment, long-term job coaching, and small group who were earning sub-minimum wages. And so I've gone back to both plans and asked them to please verify that data and then talk about what they're doing to remediate that issue. Because our expectation is if somebody is getting supported employment services, they're getting those in integrated community settings and should be receiving at least minimum wage for their work. It's not a huge number of people, but it is enough that we should be concerned that people, if they're working in the community, aren't being paid the same as their peers that work right side by side with them. And so we're asking the MCOs to take a look at that, clarify the data, and then do any remediation that's necessary to correct that issue. It doesn't mean the member needs to go quit their job, but what it means is, what are we going to do to make sure they're getting paid at least minimum wage. And we know that minimum wage isn't even a living wage, right? So we need to find out why is that happening for folks. And then, pre-vote, again, most of those folks who are working in pre-vote are doing so under a 14C certificate, which is why they are able to pay sub-minimum wage. But I would really like to see the plans do a deeper dive into those members that are earning sub-minimum wages in the individual supported employment, long-term job coaching, small group, to find out what's going on there and why their reporting isn't a reporting error, or is that member really receiving sub-minimum wages in a integrated community setting. So that's kind of it for the employment data this time. Any questions for me?
Leanne, we have a number of questions and comments that have been put in the chat box.
Sure.
One of the first ones is the MCO reporting manual public and available to folks?
Ooh, I don't think it's published. I don't think so. I'll double check on that. It's part of the contracts, and the contracts get published. But I don't know that CMS has approved the most recent amendment. And so it wouldn't be published until after that, but I'll check. And if it is, I'll send the link out to that. I don't ever recall it being public. But if the contracts are public, it lends to reason that the reporting manual should be too.
Okay, thank you.
I'll check on that.
Also, Tammy shared that they were only contacted by one managed care organization to collect data. I know we've had some other providers share that. And so that's just kind of a question about, I guess maybe that's more of a comment that.
Yeah, I had heard that as well also, that one MCO was going to the providers, the other MCO was still going to case managers. And I reached out to Denise and Dee to clarify the expectations. I shared with them the data collection guide and asked for their assistance to go back and educate their folks internally about the expectations around employment and what kind of support do they need to make that happen. So, as our employment specialist, that's kind of a role that I, want them to take on, expect them to take on, advocating for employment within each of the managed care organizations. If we continue to hear problems, then we'll address it during the leadership call with the MCOs. But I'm trying to go at it through the employment specialist first.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Also, there's a question, will this billing approach replace the T 2018 UC? And also, will the H2025 not be billed until after the 90-day retention?
No. So when a member goes through IPS, I am going through IPS. I'm not using individual supported employment. I'm not using long-term job coaching until after that 90-day. After that 90-day outcome, after that fourth outcome is achieved, then I'll be transitioned over to long-term job coaching if I need it, if I need that level of support. But when I'm going through those 4 phases of IPS, that provider is getting paid for everything that I need to achieve each of those outcomes as a point in time. And maybe Lynn can talk a little bit more about that when she gets to her IPS Aspire update. But yeah, so no, individual supported employment stays. So if you all, let me just open up the fee schedule real quick so you all can take a look here. Oh, let's see, here it is. I'll move it over to my screen here so hopefully you can see it. Can you all see my screen?
Yep.
All right. So this is the fee schedule that's been published out online. It says effective September 1. All of the rates were effective July 1 with the exception of IPS. IPS is September 1, okay? So as of July 1, this is the rate for pre-voc, this is the rate for career exploration. individual supported employment. What people need to understand is that IPS is the evidence-based practice of delivering supported employment to people with chronic mental health conditions, right? Behavioral health conditions. And so the individual supported employment remains appropriate and remains applicable to anybody, right? So if I'm on habilitation and I need employment supports, the team will sit down and discuss what is the best route for me to take. Am I going to go down the IPS route, or am I going to go down the traditional route and work one-on-one with an employment development specialist, work one-on-one, and then work with a long-term job coach or what have you? So the team's going to have to look to see what works. But if I'm going down the IPS path, then I'm not also going to have a provider billing for ICIE or long-term job coaching. It's one or the other, right? So the individual SE remains. It remains appropriate. Here's the new rate per hour beginning July 1. The limits remain in place. We did increase, so the monthly cap on the total cost of SE services was also increased by 3.55% based on the rate increase that went to effect July 1st. Long-term job coaching, the rates were all increased by 3.55% effective July 1st. Small group SE, same thing. Each rate was increased by 3.55% beginning July 1st. And now we have the new IPS models added to the fee schedule. And so the limit still applies here, but these are the, the outcome payments and the procedure code that's going to be billed for each of those outcomes. And so you can see that this is distinct and separate from the individual supported employment on the fee schedule, and that those hour criteria here is not applicable because we're making outcome payments under IPS. So hopefully that clears that question up.
Thank you.
Yeah, other questions?
Yep, Paige was curious about if the data in the employment outcome data that you shared in the report could be disaggregated to show the number of people enrolled who had competitive earnings that were not in a segregated setting under an employer with a 14C.
I think Lynn actually answered my questions. I was just curious why, because it said just competitive, it didn't say integrated. So I was wondering if there was a reason if that was all lumped into one.
No, we define competitive integrated employment. So we expect, if you look at our rules, we expect any supported employment service to occur in an integrated community-based setting, and which is also compliant with our HCBS setting rules.
Yeah, I'm just used to seeing those words together, and I just saw competitive wages. So I wondered what were the non-competitive, or if it was a different setting.
Thank you. Rachel has a question on, will the supported employment training requirement table for staff be updated?
Are you talking about the employment matrix and the employment training and development matrix that was developed with ICIE? Is that what we're talking about here? We can certainly, we know that we need to update our Employment First guidebook. And we, I think at the same time, we will update that employment matrix and update the training and development guide in order, all at the same time, so that people have that information and it's all brought to current.
Perfect. Yes, that's what she was asking about. Thank you.
Yep.
Dee shared that AmeriGroup and Iowa Total Care has met and had some questions as requested. And she believes there are some additional questions. I don't know if we'll be able to address those today, but hopefully we are going to schedule an MCO ICIE collaborative work group meeting, and that might be a good time to dive into some of that, if that works. And then Lynn just made a comment that you also need to bear in mind Iowa only has 2 providers for IPS right now.
Right.
and that she believes four teams with the pilot providers, and soon will be training up to 3 newly selected early adopter IPS providers. So there's not much saturation across the state right now. Leanne, could I ask are you able to share with us like all the different kinds of documents you shared on your screen and referenced? Are those things we'd be able to share with the coalition?
Absolutely. I'll send you and Jess in an email all of those documents. You know, and so while we're on that topic, I wanted to also, you know, we also increased the rates for habilitation, received the 3.55% rate increase. So that's day hab, and then of course the supported employment and pre-voc services. The home-based hab is different. Home-based hab had a separate appropriation to lift the rates for home-based hab. And so there is a new fee schedule for home-based hab effective July 1 that adds the intensive residential habilitation services. And so I'll just show you all that real quick. So again, these are all out on the IME fee schedule website, and I'll send the documents and the links and all that after this meeting for all of this stuff that I've shown you today. So these are the new rates for home-based hab beginning July 1st. And you can see we've added that tier 7 intensive residential habilitation service. We don't have a whole lot of providers doing that right now because they're still trying to figure out with the regions what that service is going to look like, but it's available if we have somebody that needs it and a provider that's willing and able to do that. So other changes that are coming down the pipe. So the state plan amendment for habilitation eligibility and using the locus and cal locus to as part of the eligibility process, as well as part of the determination at which home-based hab tier is appropriate for the member. That SPA has gone in, state plan amendment has gone into CMS. We haven't heard anything yet. They have up to 90 days to review and get back to the department, but we fully anticipate on moving forward with those changes on November 1st. The rules have been noticed. We did get some pushback on the MCOs scoring the locus and cal locus. However, we have been assured that when the comprehensive assessment and social history are current to the member's needs, that is an appropriate process to utilize. And so that's kind of what we're going with, unless CMS, you know, has a problem with the methodology, and they'll let us know for sure. So anyway, they you know, they have the expectation of an independent assessment, and so we'll see what they come back and say to us. It is a very similar process to what we do with the supports intensity scale today. You know, the assessment is completed with a member at the home, and then it comes in and is scored by the MCOs in order to derive that that tier for the member. So we have some experience with this process, and we've got several layers of oversight in place that hopefully, you know, will help us stay on top of monitoring the reliability and validity of doing it as a desk scoring guide. So we'll see. CMS may come back and say, nope, you got to change all this. And we say, okay, and we do it. You know, so we'll see. Other questions for me? Want to talk real quick about Medicaid unwind. So folks have been getting notifications about their LTSS services coming to an end because they were determined to no longer meet the eligibility criteria. And so if a member does receive notice that they are no longer eligible for the LTSS program because they were determined not to meet level of care during the pandemic, but we kept them on until now, and they think they do still meet level of care, they should, of course, file an appeal. Same thing for members if they were determined no longer to meet HAB because they were over income or moved to an eligibility group that's not eligible for state plan HAB, they should also file an appeal. What we'll try to do in those cases is see if there is grounds to do redetermination before and try to get it resolved before it actually goes to hearing. But if folks are getting those letters, and they will be getting those letters, they should have started getting them in June for August 1st effective date. But they're, as people's renewals come around, they may be still seeing those letters coming in the mail. And it's just really important that, if they want to keep their services, number one, they have the right to do that during an appeal. And number two, we would like the opportunity to review that and see what we can do before it actually goes to hearing. Maybe we can provide the relief that's being sought. So. What else? We are continuing the flexibilities. So right now, the flexibilities that we asked for the HCBS programs, allowing for respite while the parent who is an essential worker is at work, waiving the cap on the ID waiver respite, allowing for services to be provided in other settings that maybe don't necessarily meet the HCBS setting requirements or exceed the number of people that are allowed in our setting rules. Those are continuing. CMS is going to tell us 60 days in advance of the expiration of the public health emergency. Right now, the public health emergency at the federal level has been extended out to October 21st. And since we have not received notice, I'm assuming that, they're going to probably extend it out again to at least December 21st, or they usually do it in 90-day chunks, right? So they haven't extended it yet, but I imagine it'll be extended again, just given what's going on with the variant in the country right now. So I don't see them time soon until we can get those numbers back down and our vaccinations up across the country, but who knows? We'll see. Everything's political, right? Other questions for me, specific questions about the PHE or public health emergency unwind? Any questions about other changes that are coming down the pipe with Medicaid? If not, we should probably turn it over to the next person.
Well, Leanne, thank you so much. That's a great information, great overview on a lot of really important, critical topics. I think because VR has often been bumped in our coalition meetings, we're going to go ahead and go to VR right now, and then we'll come back to Lynn for an overview on IPS. But I think if it still works, we're going to kick it off with just introducing VR's new bureau chief, Richard Clark. Richard, welcome and congratulations on your new position. I'm going to turn it over to you to say hello to coalition members.
Oh, hello. Yeah, as Amy said, my name is Richard Clark. I'm the new RSB bureau chief for Iowa Vocational Rehabilitation Services. Just a little background, just to kind of know my story. I've been with VR since 2005. I was a counselor in Waterloo, became a supervisor in Des Moines, then moved to a resource manager for quality assurance, and now I'm the bureau chief somehow. I'm not quite still sure how that worked out, but they trust me with a little bit, I guess. I had lots of experience throughout the years. I actually taught with Amy at Drake for a while, both adjunct instructors, and worked with Amy on some presentations back in the past when she was with ADA out of Kansas City. So we've known each other for a few years, I think, over the time. So have a huge passion for the work that you guys are doing. I'm very excited for what you're doing, and hope to be able to be a voice to continue to push your mission forward, because we really appreciate the work you're doing. I know you've done a lot with our statewide needs assessment, and we'll continue to ask for help with that as we go forward. But I really do appreciate the work that you guys are doing, and the amount of knowledge. As I sat and listened this morning, the amount of knowledge in the room really astounds me. So you guys are really, really fortunate to have such intelligent people around you. And I'm sure I will pick on that as much as I can to kind of gain knowledge and gain information. So That's just a little bit about who I am. I'm excited to be a part of this. I know I won't be on here much longer. I got another thing I got to run to, but I'm glad Amy gave me a few minutes this morning to introduce myself. If you have any questions, throw them at me and I'll see if I can answer them. As long as they're not serious, I'll be able to answer pretty quickly.
Feel free to unmute or type questions in the chat box. Richard, is it all right if we share your contact information in our notes with folks too?
Yes, definitely share my contact information. I have a cell phone that I keep with me that has my email on it. So I'm moving around to keep that. I try to respond within 24 hours. So make sure, don't hesitate to share that. If anybody has any questions, reach out to me.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. We're excited to work with you in this position.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy, for giving me a few minutes this morning.
Deanna, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So I was asked several times actually to give updates on voc rehab, and luckily the pandemic kind of made things move real slowly, and so there really wasn't much to update anyhow, so it was quite all right. And meanwhile, our partner Lynn had much bigger fish to fry, since they kept having to change lots of things, and they handle a much bigger process in folks' lives. And so so there was no problem at all. I'm glad that she's able to give us updates and let us know what's going on. And I want to say that really because a lot of the things that we do here at VR, we try to mirror our partner sister IMEs. And so it's really important for us to know what's going on there. As many of the things that we do is in collaboration with our IME folks, especially for individuals who are in need of long-term support services. And we do have an MOA with DHS to collaborate in providing services based on individuals' ages and stuff like that. So just to give folks an idea of what we are doing towards employment first, IPS and customized discovery, we often call it CD, but those are a couple of things that I'm going to talk about mainly today, just because these are things that are coming up real soon here. And it's in the process of needing a lot of training, making sure that everybody's on the same page and so forth. And so I don't have enough time to go into the weeds with each of these programs, but I do want to talk about each of them so that you all are aware of what is going on as IVRS moves forward with both IPS as well as customized discovery. A little bit about IPS. I'll start off with that one first, since that's what is what has been discussed already. So our payment outcome is the same as IMEs. Like I said, we want to mirror what our IME partners are doing. And so that has been established with 2 pilot areas at this moment. And as we continue to work with Aspire, which is the Advancing State Policy Integration for Recovery and Employment. And I hope I got that right, Lynn. Anyways, that's what Aspire stands for. And they are in the process of helping the state get some more providers to stand up some IPS programs. So that as that occurs, obviously we want to partner with the providers who stand up in the areas that will be happening. And so once that happens, we want to make sure that our staff are on board and trained to understand how that is going to be provided, what the payment points are, what are the expectations for documentation, for how to collaborate and make sure that the job candidate is participating in an optimal way so that IPS is successful in more parts of our state. And as it continues to grow, then it will go to more offices and so forth. At least that's the hope, right? And so I'm not going to go again into details about what IPS is in general, but as far as the 2 pilot sites, which is 43 North Iowa and Hope Haven Rock Valley, are the 2 providers right now, and they have about two cadres that they are doing IPS in both of those areas. They are for 43 North Iowa, we're collaborating with Prairie Ridge for the mental health services, because there is a mental health component that needs to occur. We're also collaborating with, of course, the MCOs and Sioux Rivers for the mental health county regions area. In our northwest side is Plains Area Mental Health Center with Hope Haven, Rock Valley, and County Social Services, right, is the region there. So, so there's at least 4 to 5 partners that has to come together to stand up an IPS and to collaborate to make sure that all of the different key aspects of IPS works. And so as Aspire works to stand up a new provider, those are the key partners that we're looking at in establishing. We have gotten some pretty decent numbers as far as IPS is concerned. Let me make sure, because I don't want to just spit out these numbers. For IPS, where are my numbers? IPS. Okay, so for IPS, in 2019, fiscal year 2019, the rehab rate was 46.67. So not the greatest, but also you got to consider this was brand new, and we were quite surprised actually that the numbers were as good as they were, with it being brand new. Providers were new. Our staff was new at learning to use the process and how to identify those who would benefit from IPS as well. And so last year, the rate went up a little bit. So that's a good sign. It was at 47.06. And so this fiscal year, the 21 fiscal year, we won't know until after the end of September, of course. And so, because we follow the federal fiscal year, October 1st through end of September 30th. And so after that, but with the preliminary look on those numbers, as of what I see, it continues to improve. And so that's really exciting to know that we have the upwards trajectory in terms of rehab rate. And the way that we look at rehab rates at VR is the number of those who have successfully closed versus those that have for whatever reason, did not have a successful closure. And so that is the rate for IPS thus far. Just been really exciting for us in terms, our administrator right now is carefully moving forward with IPS, just because we offer services for individuals who have chronic mental illness, right? And those services can be provided through the services that are on our menu. The difference with IPS and that is that not only are we looking at milestone payments, but we're looking at the way that those specific individuals are provided services kind of like, when you talk about motivational interviewing and the philosophy of meeting an individual where they are in terms of their employment journey, I think that truly reflects that idea in terms of, when an individual with chronic mental illness is ready for employment, we got to be on it right away, right? We don't want to miss or delay that mark when they're ready, because who knows what will happen if we delay it 2 months, a month down the line. So we got to be ready when they're ready and meeting them when they're ready and where they're ready. So that's IPS. I don't know, do you want to ask questions now, or do you want me to keep on going?
Does anybody have any questions? Feel free to unmute or type in the chat box. And if we don't see anything or hear anything right away, go ahead and keep going.
All right. So the other Employment First initiative that we have is customized discovery. And I think we're going to be talking a little bit more into details about that, but I'll just touch base in the fact that IPS and customized discovery, there are two key benefits that I want to point out in the way that why they're a little bit different from the services that are on our menu. It is the fact that what we have discovered out of both of our pilots for IPS and customized discovery, one is that it has resulted in a partnership with our providers in a way that we did not imagine. I mean, obviously, if we didn't have that great of a relationship, it's going to improve, right? But for those that said that they had, oh, we don't need anything else, we've got really great, relationships with our partners. Once they started doing IPS and customized discovery, that partnership went to another level. And so that was just really wonderful in terms of being able to utilize either IPS or CD with our job candidates, is that it had improved that. And when the partnership improves, that journey is so smooth for our job candidates. It's priceless. And then the other key thing with using IPS and customized discovery is that we're looking at folks who are most significantly disabled. And in some of the cases, these are situations where they might have been deemed unemployable at one point in history, right? And through IPS and customized discovery, that is no longer a part of the vocabulary. And so we're producing outcomes for those individuals. And so those are the two key things that I wanted to point out why these two programs are so wonderful. The thing about it is then for both our CRPs and for our staff is to understand what are the options. Do we go the a la carte route, or do we go the IPS or customized discovery route? And that is the process that we're looking at right now, as well as we try to help people filter out what's the best route for them to go. Because, that a la carte route is still going to be there. That's the fees for services, choosing individual services that'll support that individual at that time. That's going to be there throughout the whole, whatever it is that they choose, but also just to make sure that whether IPS or customized discovery will take it up that extra notch in terms of expediting the outcomes for that individual. I wanted to touch base a little bit about what's going on at VR in terms of numbers. I'm in the process of getting ready to send out what we call is a grade report, kind of like, it's not called a grade report, we call it a scorecard, right? And we report out to our CRPs that we have been partnering with. It basically captures, can I share my screen, Jess, Amy?
You should be able to take it.
Okay, there we go. Can you guys see it? Oh, shoot. Sorry. Did I do something? What did I do? I was echoing.
I think
really
you're
loud.
okay. I think
Okay,
it
good.
was somebody else's phone or computer.
Oh, okay. It happened right when I clicked this and I thought I did something. Sorry. Okay. So, but can you see my screen? Okay, cool. So this is basically what the report card looks like. We're taking a look at the rehab rate, hourly wages, the hours that, the average hours that an individual works per week, and how long the individual was in service. And so I did not do this. And so there was a formula that someone way smarter than me was able to come up with and developed a matrix that spit out a rating between, what is considered a good grade, a good score, and what is not so great. And it ranged from 1 to 3. And so what you're seeing there, 1 being really great and 3 being we need some work, right? So this is going to be going out to all of our local office supervisors and to the employment directors of the CRPs. And what we are encouraging folks to do between the local teams and the local CRPs is to use this to take a look at how services are going. Because as much as this is a reflection of the services that we are getting, it's also a reflection of our partnership. And it's also a reflection of what our local offices are also doing. And so, the last thing that we want these report cards to be used for is to be punitive or anything like that, because it is definitely not used for that. Although it might feel that way when we do share the information with job candidates and their family as part of our informed choice process, so that they can choose, which provider they want to go with when there is an option. Right now, there's sometimes in some areas there might not be an option, but they still have every right to know, how this provider does in terms of rehab rates and hourly wages and the number of hours they average in helping an individual get employment, as well as how long people are typically in service for. So this is I'm hoping that I can get all of this out to all of our providers within the next week or 2 here. And then from there, we are encouraging our local offices to reach out to their local providers to begin communication and talking and making plans about how to improve. And the big kicker is to celebrate the successes. That is like super important to celebrate those successes. So,
Anna, can I ask, Jen put a comment in the chat box. I had the same question as well. Is this something that could be made accessible to all Iowans? Is it something that we could share as well with our notes? And Jen, jump in if I didn't capture your question correctly, but she was just curious why it wasn't an equitable service accessible to all Iowans with disabilities, or is it accessible? Or available. I'm going to throw in available.
I guess it could be. We could definitely post it on our via our website. I'm not even sure why it has never been. can I just say that I'm new?
Yeah, you can. You can.
Because that is a wonderful idea. So I will definitely share that with our administrator. And is Richard still on? Did he run? He always flees when there's the tough questions.
Tough question. He's gone. Yeah.
I'm kidding. No, he does not do that to us, but I will definitely bring that up to our team. I don't see why it shouldn't, because it's public information for all of our job candidates when we share how, CRP is doing. So yeah, I can definitely figure out where we can post it. And I mean, definitely it should be on our website. So
I think it is on the website.
I'm sorry, what was that page?
At one point it was on the website. So I mean, it was available it was published at one point.
Oh, cool.
I'm not sure if the most recent version is, but I've gone to it before on the website.
Okay. And we have a web designer who has been like overhauling our website like at least 2 to 3 times now since I started this position. And so it might have gotten lost in the shuffle. So I will make sure that it gets posted back up then.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Also, Dee has a question where she wanted to just to double check and clarify. Did you say that number 1 is the best? She just wants to make sure she heard that accurately in the rating scale.
Yes, 1 in the rating scale is the best.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so and just to give you an idea, and then we also break it down by provider as well. So we give the details to the provider so they know specifically how they are doing in each of those areas. And then we also have like numbers based on the services that they provide and recidivism rates as well. So that is included in a separate report that is specific for each individual provider. Okay, I see something in the chat. Oh, no, I'm heading into customized discovery right now, Lynn. So thank you for leading us right into it. So customized discovery is the other Employment First initiative that we are providing. I'm so in love with this program because one of the things that we as an agency did or do and continue to do, and this is what Richard's previous life was also consumed with, I guess is the better word, is quality assurance. And when we did those quality assurance, what they discovered was that there was a pattern. And the pattern is that the cases that had really good employment plans developed with a good process that was attached to that plan typically resulted in better placement. And when I say better placement, the placements were more successful, but also people stayed in the jobs much longer. So when I talk about customized discovery and you think about that, what we discovered, customized discovery is something that really helps establish that plan that we develop. Because remember, everything that follows that plan. And so if we don't have a good plan to start off with, the results is in not only the numbers, but what we have seen in through our quality assurance process and stuff like that too. So beginning October 1st of this year, so that's fiscal year 2022, we will, I love Amy's cat. We will begin utilizing customized discovery And our 12-hour discovery service that's currently on our menu of service will no longer be available. Customized discovery is available for those who are most significantly disabled. And one of the things that people are worried about is that, oh no, then what do I do with my other people who are not in the most significantly disabled category, right? We still have the services on our menu. And if you take a look at the activities that people are typically doing in discovery, the current 12-hour discovery, you can break it down to the services that are available. And so those are still available to those who are still in need of discovery type activities, and we can authorize for those things. I just wanted to give you guys a little history before I go into discovery, customized discovery a little bit further. And we've been working with Griffin and Hammes. I don't know for how many years. Jess can probably tell you all that, but it's important to understand the history because it has shaped what we are now presenting as customized discovery. So Jess, can you give the group like a quick rundown of what the history is like?
Absolutely. So I imagine most of the coalition members remember when we launched, right, customized employment and discovery in the state, piloted it back in 2011 and 2012. There were 7 CRPs, coalition members, that piloted that service, right? And we got much of the same outcomes that Vienna was just talking about right now, right? We found out that folks that were previously determined as unemployable or were most significantly disabled, and maybe we weren't sure what to do and where to go and how to do it. We were seeing success with that, right? And long-term success. So kind of fast forward, right, through that initial collaboration and piloting to kind of where Vienna says back in around 2020. So, and so that those outcomes of that pilot introduced this idea of discovery. It was offered on the menu, 12-hour authorization, right? And we build the services to get to that customized outcome. And then as Vienna said, there was a review of the data. How are we doing? What are we learning? What's the data telling us? And it was telling us that, you know, maybe we needed to have a more robust authorization that allowed for delivering the service with fidelity. I'm excited to tell you that discovery is an evidence-based practice. And Iowa providers, along with other providers all across the country, provided that data through their pilot efforts and capturing their efforts using the fidelity scale. And that's what we started to do in 2020. We started to pilot this 40-hour authorization for discovery. Instead of building on the authorizations, it included a professional rate, a higher level rate, because we were asking for more, and we were providing a lot of training and technical assistance for employment specialists, right? Really elevating that, if you will. And we just really focused on implementing discovery in a more robust way, paying attention to fidelity, scoring for fidelity, training both counselors, supervisors, and CRPs to be fidelity administrators, fidelity reviewers. So we were paying attention to that. And we were also kind of cross-training together, right? Local offices, along with their CRPs, were participating in all the trainings and technical assistance together. That's where Vienna says, you know, these relationships were either strengthened or expanded in ways. So that's where we got today. So that's how we got to where we are today. So really exciting stuff to kind of see the evolution from back in 2011, and here we are in 2021, 2022. There were 8 providers that were piloting, and I believe we're onboarding 22 new providers this fall to kind of expand on what they're learning and to begin to implement using the 40-hour authorization. Back to you, Vienna and or Jolene.
Thank you. So I asked Jolene to come and talk to the group today. Jolene is our counselor up in the Carroll office. And, you know, who better than to give you the more accurate picture of what goes on in providing customized discovery than to hear it straight from one of our, and I don't say this lightly, our star provider and partners in doing customized discovery, and that's Joelle. She will tell you all the pitfalls, and she will tell you the height of celebration when it comes to understanding the highs and the lows of customized discovery. I think Jolene, you've been in customized, you've been doing that from the get-go, right? Oh, you're muted.
Yes, I think it actually was 2019 when we started with identifying people, January of 19, that we were identifying people that we thought on our caseload would work with this customized employment. And I'm sorry, my name at the bottom is not Vienna, but it's Jolene Schultz. And I'm part of the Ames unit, but I work out of the Carroll office, and we cover 5 counties. So I have lots of CRPs in this area. And there, 2 of them actually have been working with us with the customized employment all that while. And they're doing a great job. So we identified people we thought would fit this role model. Jess was there with us too. And we learned a lot. We learned maybe the way we case noted, or that the CRPs case noted, they were used to maybe writing in more of a negative sense because that's what drove the money from other agencies, you know, the needs. And our case noting, or the new case noting, had to be more about the successes or the celebrations. So I think that was a struggle in the beginning for our CRPs, was how do I write this up when I'm used to writing it that way? And remember, this was prior to having forms to follow. So it was just kind of a trial and error. But we saw some really really good successes. One of my favorites is a client of mine, young man out of high school. He was not referred to me until after he had graduated from high school. Diagnosis of PDD, but showing more the anxiety issues, and truly was never diagnosed. So as we were working through all the process, we worked on getting the diagnosis as well. But he, when we did the first part of the discovery, which was a home visit, so staff from our CRP, myself, just kind of prepped us on our drive over, and but we went into the home, and you don't take any paperwork with you. You don't take any notes. You have true conversations and you listen. And so we found out this young man had great organizational skills. He had collections. He had probably every baseball team, basketball team, a hat from each of them. And he had them organized in his room on like his favorites and who was playing next, and just tons of things. And we also found out he was very creative. He loved Marvel movies and DC movies. And so he would take things as ordinary as a lid to an ice cream bucket, and he'd make shields out of them. So we knew he had this creative side. We knew he had organizational skills, very competent in talking, communication skills were wonderful, and a love of music, just collections of records. So kind of a long story short, after the discovery process happened, the CRP met with him more and more, and they knew of a person in town that was very creative. loved music, had a collection almost equally as well as big. And so they took the job candidate to that business so he could experience some of what they did there. And the business was actually a t-shirt company. So they did logos on t-shirts, hats. So this was this almost match made in heaven right away. And the other thing, this guy listened to music during the day while he worked. So our young man had started with the screen printing or cleaning the screens actually. And even long after his case has been closed with Voc Rehab, I occasionally stop in, and now he's doing some customer service. So he greets me. The screen cleaning, I should say, was on a lower level. So he, knowing that he was greeting me when I came in the door, I knew he had advanced in his position because otherwise he would have been down in the basement. And he was showing me all the things he had designed through embroidery, through screen print. And I do know some of you are familiar with the article. Jess, you'll have to help me on that. The cartoon printout.
The Marvel? Like,
yes.
Oh, yeah.
The comic book, the comic thing that you guys, or that DDS.
Yes.
Somebody.
Yes. It helped design, yes, like a comic book Marvel looking to highlight his story.
Yep.
Just to highlight the young man's story, to kind of match his theme, his passion. So.
And his parents had always made sure he had certain skills, but there was no passion in there for him. And you said exactly what it is. It's passion. And even today, as we progress through some of these placements, I often tell people it gives me goosebumps. It gives me goosebumps just to talk to you about it, because people with disabilities are people.
Unknown caller.
They're no different than us. We are not going to stay at a job that we don't feel appreciated or we don't like. And this discovery starts with learning what makes people tick. And it's just so magical when it happens. Another success I have that has happened with a CRP has truly, he had been in a workshop for years and years and years. And then when they went to the situation where they, sorry, I dropped my phone and now it's still going. But he had been in the workshop for years and years and years. And he was a good employee. But then, of course, when those closed, he was an employee in the workshop. So he was hired by the CRP. But when all of those closed, he lost his job of 13 years. And so he has gone through customized employment. It's just, I guess the best part about this, and he was hired. And the best part about this is that the employer never let anyone come in, ever. I mean, he was kind of worried about somebody might steal his trade secrets and everything. The CRP was able to go in because this young man had done so much on his in his job, organizational skills. He wanted to show the CRP what this young man did. And his diagnosis was ADHD, which I think typically people don't think that's someone who has good organizational skills. The employer said, I'd take $1 million of him. And he showed the CRP, the job coach, invited her to come in and see his work. And he had organized their storeroom, labeled everything, put things in order, how you would need them for this particular business. And he said he's a keeper. And I will soon be closing him within the next couple of weeks as a successful employment because of customized employment. And it just makes me so happy to see him. I mean, his smile is like from here to here. It's just huge. And he's just so pleased with everything. So I can answer questions or I could tell you more stories, but I don't want to take up all the rest of the time. So
Thank you so much, Jolene. That is just you know what we're talking about when we celebrate the highs of customized discovery. So if you're thinking about, okay, so what's it all take, and what are we expecting out of providers to do customized discovery? The key thing about customized discovery is that we before, with discovery, we had that 12-hour discovery service on our menu, right? And what we got out of that was a report, if you want to call that, that was supposed to be used to help us decide, okay, well, what's the employment plan, right? Because we went through that process to discover what that person is all about and help them learn about themselves and so forth. It wasn't so great. And so those reports weren't very helpful for us. And so that's one reason why we went to that, to customized discovery, is that we're getting much better reports out of them. And so, so there's a process that we're also kind of putting this into a program, is a better way to describe it. So the outcome of customized discovery is not just a vocational report that we would get on the individual, but an actual outcome of customized employment and placement. So that is the result of customized discovery. So in order to get that, we are also expecting the provider to have trained providers who are ACRE certified with a focus on customized employment. And so they have to complete that training in October. Is it October 27th, October 28th? We are providing a training to those who are going to be providing customized discovery for voc rehab, so that both our team and the CRP provider are beginning that partnership with customized discovery from that point forward, so that they know what is expected of each other and how to move forward as a team to provide customized discovery. And then the most important information about customized discovery is the payment points. If a provider completes all of the parts of customized discovery, the payout is up to $10,861.76 per job candidate. And so that is a much, much higher payout. And the reason why it comes out to be much higher is because we are now, through our pilot programs, we have learned that 40 hours is a good number to be able to do discovery in a comprehensive and in a way that is really going to yield us the information that we are looking for to develop that plan. And not only are we increasing it from 12 hours to up to 40 hours, but we're also paying the provider at the professional rate to provide discovery. So, so those are the key things about customized discovery. And we really, really have worked hard at providing information about both the highs of highs and the lows of lows of what it takes to do customized discovery, because we do understand that providers need to know and need to assess their capacity in being able to do customized discovery. And I'm super stoked to say that after all the media blitz and the information sessions and the individual sessions that we had with providers and our voc rehab staff, there is going to be at least one, if not more than one provider who have made commitments to provide customized discovery for all of our offices. So that's super, super awesome to hear, especially when, because I'm also on the team that's trying to get IPS set up in our state as well. And we weren't having as much of a success in getting providers to commit to doing IPS. And so I'm really stoked to say that with customized discovery, there has been, gosh, we've got one, at least one for every office. So that's really awesome to hear. And so we are working with Is Leanne still on here? We're still on Leanne's doorsteps, trying to figure out how we get the momentum going with her folks at DHS there, because customized discovery is just so awesome, as you can hear from what Jolene says. And I'd be happy to also get you into contact with the other pilot programs who are just boasting about what it has resulted for them as CRPs, as well as for our staff. I'm at 11:57. I'm so sorry. I was intending to give you guys more time to ask questions, but we have 3 minutes for my part.
Right.
Hi, so I'll just answer Vienna real quick. So from a Medicaid perspective, while we haven't undergone the same exercise for customized employment or customized discovery like we have for IPS to, clearly crosswalk, customized employment and customized discovery can be provided within the traditional supported employment services currently reimbursed under Medicaid. So I could certainly see a lot of those activities fitting very closely with the service activities under individual supported employment, as well as long-term job coaching. If you look at those menu of activities that are able to be provided under each of those services. The one thing that we haven't done yet is gone through the exercise of what an outcome payment would look like for customized employment like we have for IPS. And so there's some work that needs to be done there. And it's just a matter of bandwidth, quite frankly. There's so many projects and so little people on our team that there just hasn't been the bandwidth to engage in that work. But we recognize that that's work we need to do so we can continue to go down the path together and reimburse consistently for like services. So work still to be done.
Yep. And that's why I say we're at your doorstep. So I apologize for not getting you on, involved sooner, but I think that there was a lot of information that we were still looking for too. So so that's in the works, just so that people know, how is everything going to gel for customized discovery between voc rehab and IME providers. The neat thing about as we go forward with customized discovery is that our providers are looking at ways to collaborate with us, especially as we look at the dynamics with sub-minimum wage providers and so forth. Customized discovery is so applicable for those folks. And so it's something that we're looking to push more for the folks who are coming out of sub-minimum wage and considering competitive integrative employment. And that's just going along with the momentum of what's happening in Section 511 events.
I just wanted to add a comment in case folks are not familiar with this. We've been kind of using some different language, and I wanted to explain a bit about that. So for years, we've referred to customized employment. Within VR, the Rehab Services Administration at the federal level has a definition for customized employment that's slightly different than what we are referring to as we talk about the customized employment pilots and training. And so in an effort to kind of clarify a general customized employment, not related to the evidence-based practice, but just generalized terminology under RSA, VR has now started to refer to that evidence-based practice that we've been discussing this morning as customized discovery, to make that differentiation. So if we're talking about customized employment in the way that we have for a number of years, that is the same as when we're using the terms customized discovery. we're just trying to transition in to utilizing customized discovery so it's not confused with just that broader general term of essentially customizing a job through RSA. That helps add some clarity for folks.
And I'll add to that as well. And there is a whole string of services that goes along with this format of discovery. And that's the key part to the outcome, is using the information that we have garnished from that discovery process that will lead to the type of outcome that we're looking for. And if those two pieces don't work together, and I know that Leanne had actually alluded to this, is that yes, we do have services for job development and customized employment and job coaching and all that good stuff. But how those things are done is very, very much tied to the results from that discovery process. And if we don't utilize it, then it's really just, you're right, Leanne, it's just using a la carte services.
Do we have any other questions or comments right now on this? Okay, then I think we're going to go ahead and move on. I know that we have three things left on our agenda for the next half an hour or so. One is a quick Absi update. We have Lynn, who's graciously allowed me to bump her time to later in the meeting today to talk a little bit about the IPS work in the state, and then any other partner announcements that we might have that folks want to share. So if Paige and Nicole Erickson, if you want to go ahead and maybe give a quick Absi update, then I think we'll go ahead and then move on to Lynn to talk about IPS, if that works.
Sure. I can start, and then if Nicole, is that okay? I give a few updates and you can jump in. I can't see her, but I'll just start. So first of all, for anyone who might be new or isn't familiar, Absi is the Association for People Supporting Employment First. It's a membership organization at the national level with state chapters, which are all focused on advancing employment and self-sufficiency for people with disabilities. So really it's for anybody who wants to advance the mission of competitive integrated employment for all people. We'd love to have new members, so consider that if that's something that you've given thought to. Some of the benefits of joining, one, there's just strength in numbers. So if you care about something and other people care about it and you work on it together, you're more likely to be successful. You also get access to a lot of policy alerts and updates, both at the national and state level, access to professional development resources, discounts on trainings, conference at the national and state level, webinars, special events. And then you also get the Journal of Vocational Rehabilitation, VR journal, for scientific research. You get a subscription to that. And then you get to vote for national and state board of directors, so people that help influence the work of those organizations. So that's just a little background. A couple updates. We are accepting nominations for the Absi board of directors, and this is open for anyone. If you become a board member, you have to become a member of the organization, but it takes 5 minutes to go in and become a member. There are student discount rates. So I will send out links to all of this. So Jess and Gayla, if you're taking notes, you can put these in the notes. And one is a link to a survey for the board member nominations. There's also our annual Absi Awards. We're accepting nominations for those awards in various categories through August 30th. So I have a survey link for that I'll share. We're hosting an in-person event on September 28th at the Southridge DMAC location. The cost for that is $70. That includes an in-person event the night before on the 27th with food and games and everything at Smash Park. And then also the full day of, the sessions on the 28th. So we're hoping people will come in the night before, stay, and then join us that day. It's only $70. Following that in-person event, there will be virtual breakout sessions as well during the month of October, which is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. So those will be on the 10th, 13th, and 20th of October. There will be 2 sessions between 11:30 and 1:30 on those days. And your registration gets you access to those too. There's going to be some cool things coming up in those. And then there's also some trainings coming up. Job development training starts October 4th, and then job coaching training starts October 11th. So again, I'll send out links to all of that so I don't overwhelm people. Nicole, anything I missed that you want to add?
Nicole, we can't hear you.
She's not on mute, but I cannot hear her either. Is the thumbs up? We're good. You can type in the chat if there's other updates too. Okay, sounds like we're good. Okay. Yeah, other than that, we don't have any other updates. So thanks, Amy.
Thank you both so much. Nicole's going to be moving into the role of president of Absi starting this fall. I think is it at the conference that the change of the guard. I just want to add a plug. Iowa Absi is amazing, and the Iowa Absi board is incredible. And you have really diverse, talented partners from across the state. And so it's just a really amazing group of professionals. And so I encourage anybody who has an interest, even if you feel like you're maybe newer to the area, but you would like to grow your skills, you can't pick a better group of people to partner with. And if you're not a member, please join, because Iowa's really an amazing chapter, and there's a lot of good work that's being done in the state. So thank you guys so much. Lynn, I would love to turn over the time now to you, please.
Okay. All right. I'm going to try and do a screen share of a PowerPoint. I don't think we've had a PowerPoint today, so we better have one, right? If I can figure out how to do this. It's always, every time I do it, it's different. Let's see. Well, not sure. Are you guys seeing that?
Yep, we can see it, Lynn.
You can see it, okay? All right, we'll go with it then. So you've heard people say aspire, and I'll tell you a little bit later what the definition is of that and what that's about. But it's all about individual placement and support model of supported employment. And the IPS model has been around for a lot of years, and it's specific to people with serious behavioral health conditions or serious mental illnesses, which is a lot of times a lot of the people that we serve. And they can be difficult to serve. There hasn't been a whole lot of practices that are very routinely known to be successful at helping people get into recovery from behavioral health conditions. So to me, that's exciting because IPS has been really thoroughly researched, and it's more successful than a lot of the things that we have been doing in the past. We know that 70% of people with a serious mental illness are interested in working. And in fact, only 15% of these people do work. So we certainly need to do better on that regard. There's research that shows work or employment is some of the best treatment for serious mental illnesses. So far, only about 2% of people with serious mental illnesses in the US have access through the public mental health system to receiving IPS. What is IPS? It's a particular model of supported employment, specifically for people with behavioral health conditions to work at real jobs, like the same type of regular jobs that we talk about with community integrated employment. There's variations of supported employment, and IPS refers to this particular model, which has a lot of research behind it. I will say that research in recent years, probably about the last 5 years and going on, has been expanding, looking at the model, expanding to other populations, and it has success with other populations as well. Most of the research base is on looking at it being used with people with mental health conditions. It's the only EBP for supported employment for people with serious mental illness. Like I said, it's research-based through a big body of studies. It has the standardized practice guidelines that are well-defined. It has a manual, and it's all measured using a 25-point or a 25-item fidelity scale. And it was developed by actual practitioners. Dr. Bob Drake is a psychiatrist in New England. He's been doing this for, the majority of his adult life. Debbie Becker is an employment specialist out in New England, and she's also been doing this for very many years, and that's who actually came up with the IPS model. Why are we interested in IPS? It does show that people are about 2.5 times more likely to get employed with the IPS model than with other vocational approaches for the people with mental illness. And so we have a responsibility to, put our money where we know it's going to do the most good. Bob has said, nothing that I've studied has the same kind of impact on people that employment does. Medication, case management, and psychotherapies tend to produce a small impact on people's overall adjustment. But the differences are often striking and dramatic with employment. And I think, we understand that when we think about a lot of the things that we have to offer people who are struggling with severe mental health conditions, don't really, medications often have serious side effects. Psychotherapy takes a long time. But think about, if you've ever been unemployed and what an effect that has on your life versus having a job that is a good fit for you and what that can do for your self-esteem and engagement with society. So IPS there's 28 randomized control trials, which is like medical grade research that show on an average 58 or 56% of participants got competitive jobs. And that's as compared to 23% for our standardized supported employment practices that we have done in the past. I don't believe any customized employment was ever been compared in any of these studies. So that'll be interesting in the future if they start to do that. People served with IPS tend to get jobs faster, hold their jobs longer, and they work more hours. The long-term studies show that the people are 3 times more likely to get work, and they worked 4 times as many hours, again, as standardized supported employment. And then in 2012, there was a University of Iowa study of the MEPD population, which is Medicaid for employed persons. And it showed that people working as little as 2 hours a week had Medicaid claims that were 21% less money per month versus those not working. So even 2 hours a week of work can make a big difference. What this tells us is employment is a very powerful recovery intervention, often not recognized by people outside of voc rehab and Medicaid. So what is Aspire? Vienna told us earlier, it's advancing state policy integration for recovery and employment. This is, the federal government loves these acronyms. This is sponsored by the U.S. Department of Labor, Office of Disability Employment Policy, who we have been engaged with for a number of years in different efforts, and this is their newest thing. They awarded us in March of this year, along with 6 other states. We get supposedly 270 hours of technical assistance from Bob Drake, Debbie Becker, Sandy Reese, the people that you saw on the earlier slide, and so forth. They are the nation's and in fact, the world's foremost experts on the IPS model. They have an international learning community that involves about half of the US and quite a number of other countries. So Iowa's top 2 goals with Aspire, and we get this award through August of next year. So what we want to get accomplished right now and before August of next year is, number 1, get an Iowa trainer and fidelity reviewer to help us stand up and implement IPS throughout the state. That is the number 1 thing that has hindered us so far from being able to promote this practice, get it stood up, get it happening beyond our pilot programs up in the northwest corner of the state. So we are, I'm happy to say, on the verge of announcing for that position. There's just some contract things that have to happen. It's going to be in the U of I's contract with CDD, and I expect and hope that that announcement for that job will come out very soon, within the next couple of weeks. We were hoping to have that person hired by now already, but stuff happens and we got put back a little bit. But we're very excited that we're about ready to find that person. And then, of course, number 2, our capacity. We want to stand up to 3 more teams between now and August of 2022. We did an announcement asking for applicants, team applicants, and we got some applicants. And so we are pretty confident. We're about ready to announce who those awards will be. And we're pretty confident that between now and later this fall, we'll be starting up 3 new teams. So the target population for IPS in Iowa is adults and transition age youth who have a serious mental illness. It can be a secondary diagnosis to something else, and it can also be multi-occurring mental illness and substance use disorders or complex needs. We know that oftentimes things co-occur. Ideally, the person would be eligible for voc rehab and Medicaid habilitation because those are our services funding sources. And then we want teams to be able to do some outreach to underserved communities in their geographic area as they identify those. There are required roles in the teams, and you can just see the listing here. I think Vienna also mentioned these, that it's, at least 5, sometimes more parties that have to be involved that comprise a full IPS team. And it is very much a team approach. I don't know that I really want to go into this a whole lot, but here's another barrier that we have had to kind of unravel as far as standing up IPS across the state. Is there's a lot of required training, technical assistance, and fidelity reviews. There is seed funding that's very helpful for teams to stand up because you're talking about lower caseloads, integrated team meetings, more team meetings, a requirement for their employment staff or their employment specialists to be out in the community 65% of the time. Just things that impose some extra costs, especially the first year or 2 starting up. And then there's the service funding. And what I will say about this is Iowa's been able to solve the problem of the team training and fidelity reviews that will be provided once we get our state trainer reviewer on board. That'll be part of their job. And they will be mentored by the technical assistance that we get from the IPS Employment Center, which used to be Westat, and now it's called Columbia. Now they're in Columbia University. So I still haven't pivoted to saying that easily. I always want to still say Westat. And then Voc Rehab and Medicaid have worked out the outcome payment model that Leanne talked about earlier. So there's ways to fund the services that the participants get. And then this is just that outcome model showing you again, don't look at the dollar amounts because they're not correct. This was kind of, adapted from an older slide, and I don't think I have the dollar amounts correct, but that's the outcomes. And this is the documentation that would go along with supporting those outcomes. And nationally, the average is about $5,000 per candidate to come out 90 days successful job stabilization. And you'll see that Iowa has basically beat that. We're over $6,000 from either VR funding or Medicaid funding. That's the quick, down and dirty and skinny of it. I will say that the providers, it's a slower engagement process than what Voc Rehab's customized discovery has been, because you have a required stakeholder engagement process that they need to go through in order to build their team. And then there is also the required training and technical assistance process that they need to go through. And so what we're working on and hoping for is once we get our state trainer and fidelity reviewer on board and up and running, that person will be able to stand up 3 new teams every year, and they would also provide TA to the existing pilot teams that have been really operating without TA for a couple of years now. And then each year they'd stand up 3 new teams and continue to do those fidelity reviews with the existing teams until hopefully we get the state saturated, at least have a team in each of the MHDS regions. So that's the hope and the plan. That's all I've got, Amy.
That was fabulous, Lynn. Thank you for your patience too in having me bump you to later in the meeting. But do folks have any questions or comments for Lynn? I just want to say that the partners in Iowa have really worked hard to get IPS moving in the state, and they've really made some incredible strides and really fairly quickly in trying to move this service option forward. So I just want to thank all the partners and all the hard work that all of you have put in to making this a reality in Iowa. And it's just so incredibly exciting. And I think we'll be working towards the same thing with customized discovery. But all of this, hopefully these efforts will help create a more robust system that will serve a wider array of folks with varying needs and see hopefully more improved employment outcomes for everyone. So thank you, Lynn. That was really great information. And if folks feel like they haven't, that they don't have as much information as they might want on IPS, feel comfortable, or customized discovery, feel comfortable reaching out to us and we'll get you additional information. We're happy to set up a time to chat with you as well. But please feel comfortable reaching out if you have any other questions. I think the only thing we have left in the last 5 minutes is to see if there's any other partner announcements or anything that you guys want to share with each other. So please be comfortable unmuting yourself or putting things in the chat that you want to share with others.
Amy, just because I know that Gayla's doing notes, I made a faux pas in my scaling of our reports. It's and I don't think Denise is on anymore. I think she was the one who asked me if one was a good score or a not so great score. And it is actually the other way around. So a 3 is the good score, and the 1, you know, says that you have some room to grow and improve. Just wanted to correct that.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
everyone.
No problem.
So just real quick, I forgot to mention that our Director Matney is going to be holding Medicaid town halls for providers and members. And so it's going to be short notice for the August town halls. There'll be an informational letter that hopefully goes out by Monday morning for the town halls, and they'll be scheduled in August, September, and October. They'll be, the provider and members will be on the same day. So the providers town hall will be first, followed by the member town hall. I believe they're doing the provider town halls from 4 to 5 and the members from 5 to 6. And there's going to be a series of them, again, August, September, and October so far. I believe she wants to do those monthly. The first town hall that she hosted, it received very good feedback and good participation. And so just wanted to have folks keep a look on for that. When the IL is published, I'll send that over to you all so you can push it out to the membership. We know that a lot of, members don't get those informational letters. So we're also going to try and push the IL out to different advocacy organizations. Hopefully they can reach out to members who are interested in participating. And then we're also going to post it on the member website as well as the provider website. So hopefully we get good member, we hear from providers all the time, which is awesome, but we also want to hear from members who are impacted by the services and what their experiences are with Medicaid. And it's great that the director gets to hear those firsthand from the members. Those member specific stories really make a difference in policy direction and in decision making within the department. So the more members that we can get participating in those town halls, the better.
That's excellent. Thank you, Leanne. We'll share all that with the coalition too when it's available. Other questions or comments that folks want to share? Are you kidding? Are we actually going to end on time? What?
Is there a rule against that for ICIE?
I don't think it's ever happened. So just a reminder again, our November meeting, our next coalition meeting will be November 18th. It'll be virtual again, 10 to 12:30. Please put it on your calendar. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll see you again soon, I hope. Thanks to all our presenters. Have a great day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.